Good morning, pandas. This is Mr. Stam. We're going to continue our discussion on the group of fish called Chondrichthyes. And if you remember, Chondrichthyes means cartilaginous fish. So these are your fish that have an internal skeleton made almost completely of cartilage. And most of you would know these guys as your sharks and your rays. We've already talked a little bit about some of their biology, but we're going to continue mostly today with their feeding habits. Most sharks are carnivorous, and these are a continuation of the notes that we had earlier on fish. Most sharks are carnivorous. They're actively eating other prey, catching it and eating it, other fish, squid, octopus, seals, whatever they can get their teeth on. The dwarf lantern shark, which is what, 0.2 meters, very, very small, but look at those teeth. They're still actively hunting, all the way to the 8-meter long great white shark. They are actively carnivorous fish. Now, some of them are not carnivorous, as we're going to see, but most sharks and rays have very specialized senses for detecting their prey. They can smell substances in the water from very far distances, like blood and things like that. Vibrations, they can sense. They actually have some specialized structures on their their cranial area, their rostrum, that can sense vibrations, and they have vision that can see very well in dark, murky water, and they can actually sense electricity too, like most fish. Not most fish, but some fish can actually sense electrical currents in the water from the nervous system and musculature of an organism. So they can definitely see things that they could eat, basically. So that's kind of the key. Now, some of them are not going to be carnivorous and actually hunting other things. Some things like the whale shark, basking shark, megamouth shark, they're actually filter feeders. They're planktivores. They're huge. These are the largest sharks in the world, largest fish in the world. This is a whale shark here. They are exclusively planktivores. They're filter feeders. They open up their mouth and they filter in, much like whales do. Some whales do. They filter the food, and they just kind of take small particles of plankton out of the water column. This is how they do it, and that's a huge mouth there, and all the water goes through there, and they have these filter feeding apparatus that will actually, like a strainer, almost, get that food, and they get enough of it because it is all day long. They just kind of swim through the water column with their mouth open. They can eat as much krill and smaller plankton as they possibly can. Now, if they're like beach like this one is, they look a lot different than when they're floating around in the water. But they're huge organisms here, and they're filtering all the time. So not all sharks are carnivorous, but most of them are. Very much the majority are. But some are filter feeders, and the larger ones, basking, megamouth, and whale shark, are absolutely filter feeders. There's some good videos. If you actually look in the notes there on Google Classroom, you have a video of a whale shark actually eating, if you want to see that. And then we got a couple of things about the actual carnivorous ones, like a great white shark grabbing a seal. If you want to see how it does this, it's fascinating how these things capture their prey. And also a question that a lot of you, I found this on the internet: why no aquariums have great white sharks? And has there been attempts at that? And why you can't go to like the Newport Aquarium and see a great white shark? Why is that not something you see? We do see other species of sharks there, but why not a great white, the one that most people are most familiar with? So a couple good feeding videos there if you want to see actively feeding. Now, shifting gears a little bit to another group of them besides the sharks, the other major group of the cartilaginous fish are the rays. And they're very similar in their body structure to a shark, but their pectoral fins not usually, will connect to their head to make this almost diamond shape or triangular shaped structure. And they also have other things. Their gills are ventral, meaning on the bottom. You can actually see this in this picture. Those are their gill slits, not on the side of their body like a shark would be. And they have long pelvic fins. You can kind of see them right here. Pelvic meaning your pelvic girdle, like where your hips are, where your hips would be. They're cartilaginous too. So if you look in their skeleton, they're all made of cartilage. And there's many different species of them. Manta rays are pelagic. Remember, pelagic means open water. Very majestic filter feeders, just like whale sharks are. The larger of the rays are also going to be your filter feeders. And they're just filtering that water, and they capture it and filter it. They have really large cephalic fins off their head, um, almost like a bird going through the water. They're very majestic. Um, a skate um, can have spines along their body, but they don't have the stinging barbs. A lot of stingrays, actually, um, rays that you're probably most familiar with, besides the manta ray, have a stinger like on the left here in their tail. That stinger there is used for defense. And actually, if you're walking in the shallow water, you step on a stingray, it can actually whip that tail up and go through your leg with that barb, and it can be very, very painful as a defense mechanism. That's why you always should go back and forth and shuffle your feet when you're in the water. It's called the stingray shuffle, so you can kind of scare them before, so you don't step right on top of them. It's a good thing to do when you're in the water, in the shallow water where stingrays could be. Now, skates are a little different. Skates, they don't have that stinging barb on their tail. They do have spines sometimes, and they're just a little bit different in their structure. So if you hear the word skate, it's very similar to a stingray or a ray. Just don't have a stinging barb. And they actually lay eggs too. Skates lay eggs. Rays actually give live birth. And we'll talk about how they lay eggs a little bit in tomorrow's lecture. So skates are a type of ray. Now, let's talk about, now we know rays and sharks and things. Let's talk about these things and how they eat and what their threat is to humans, at least, because I think it's something that we have to talk about for sure. Of the 500 species of sharks, only 10 have really killed people. So there's 500 species of sharks, but we know about 10 species that have actively killed a human being in the water, mostly great white, bull sharks, and tiger sharks. So we've actually talked about bull sharks a little bit, and actually tiger sharks a little bit too. And great whites are obviously one of the more famous ones. Only 10 have killed people. Now, for the most part, since 1958, so this is a lot of data, since 1958, so, over 50 years here, there have been almost 3,000 confirmed unprovoked shark attacks. In other words, a person was in the water and was not like doing anything bad to the shark and got attacked in some way. 548 of those were fatal. So about 19%, the person actually died from this attack. This is pretty low, very low percent-wise. If you look at overall numbers and stuff, you extrapolate those numbers statistically, more people actually die in vending machine accidents, like where vending machines fall on top of them each year, than people die of shark attacks. So while it is a thing that could happen, it's statistically nothing I would worry about. Most of you guys don't go around worrying that a vending machine is going to kill you. So I would not worry that a shark is going to kill you. Now, there are things you can do. You shouldn't get, they like to, you shouldn't get in waters that, that have been, they're shark infested necessarily with some. I mean, you shouldn't just jump in where you see a bunch of great whites. You're asking for trouble there without some safety precautions. At dawn and dusk, when it's a little darker, that's usually where they're hunting a little bit more. I wouldn't get in the water then. So, I mean, just use some precautions, and that number actually probably goes down. These are some stats. And as you can see, this is in Australia. Since 1900, this is the left one here. Attacks have gone up, but fatalities have sort of leveled off, which means more people are in the water, is what I would say for this. The more people in the water, the more likelihood that something could happen. It's a numbers game kind of thing. Our population is growing too. So if you think about it, as population grows, more people are in the water. So you're going to have more, and this is Australia, in the Great Barrier Reef area, you're going to have more attacks. But notice that there's a spike a little bit in the 20s and 30s. But medical care is better too. If you get bit now and get medical care pretty much right away, you're going to, you're going to survive that attack possibly. It's usually only an exploratory bite anyway. They're going to bite and get rid of and let go. And it could be really serious, but they're going to move along. You're not their major prey. you're not as good tasting as a seal or a bigger fish. So at least that's what a lot of scientists think. Now, the world's deadliest regions, if you look at this map, this is pretty interesting. The bigger the orange circle, the more attacks that area's had. The red dots are fatal attacks. Fatal attacks happen more in places like Africa. I would say South Africa is probably the reason. And Australia has a lot. The Pacific Islands without Hawaii. America, United States of America, continental U.S. So the beaches along the continental U.S., Pacific and Atlantic, and Gulf. 1,000 shark attacks. This is through 2015. There's a place in Florida, the International Shark Attack File, that actually records these things. So if you report a shark attack, it goes there. So this is no data since 2015, but 1,000, only 35 people up to 2015 in the whole history of the United States have died of a shark attack. I think it's a relatively small number. It's something to be respected. These are organisms that they're not actively trying to hunt humans. But if you're in a situation where you're in the water, they could do an exploratory bite. These are organisms that are looking for food, and they're bigger than you are. So all these things play a part. So hopefully that is interesting. And we'll end this part. We'll finish up these notes tomorrow and talk about reproduction and other things about sharks and rays. But for now, I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And thanks for listening to the second part of our notes here on sharks. Have a great one.